every Honkai Star Rail player finally has their free Doctor ratio, and now that he's out and everyone has him, I know a lot of you might be thinking, what team should I run Doctor ratio on? Because, I know a lot of players are probably going to make him into one of their primary DPS characters with how good his performance is. So today, I want to go over 2 very strong team comps that'll make your Doctor ratio even more amazing. And the good thing about these team comps is there is a bit of variety you can have with them, as long as you do fulfill some basic requirements for ratio. Now, the big thing with Doctor ratio is that you do want to have debuffs on the enemy's head at pretty much all the time, so you can get his extra, I believe you get some extra damage, you get extra crit rate, crit damage from having debuffs on, and to have everything from his kit active, you do want to have 6 debuffs on the enemy. If it's 5, that's not too bad, but 6, I believe, is what you get his maximum effectiveness from. And so to do that, you want to be using characters that are going to debuff the most effectively. So the first team comp that I'm going to bring up here is just going to be your standard Hypercarry team. So in this team, we have 3 main roles, which one of them is a sustain, so we'll just get that out of the way. For Ratio's teams, he doesn't really have a best sustain per se. Now, I know obviously you can get some extra crit rate if you use Fu Xuan, and you can also get the support from Huohuo's ultimate as well for the attack and energy. So I think those 2, if I had to pick best sustains for him, those 2 would probably be it. But even if you don't have them, it's not really too big of a deal because he will have plenty of help on his teams already. So yeah, sustain is the first sort of archetype that you need on the team for the Hypercarry. Secondly, you need a debuffer. Now, in terms of getting debuffs on the enemy, Silverwolf is going to be your best in slot by far. And this is because she's able to apply, like, I believe it's 7 different debuffs on the enemy, which is absolutely insane. So her by herself can get Doctor Ratio's entire kit working, because he does only need 6 debuffs. So Silverwolf is incredibly solid there. Then, if you don't have Silverwolf, or you just want to run some other characters depending on your situation, you can also run Welt here as well. And then you can also run Pela and Guinaifen, because including Pela and Guinaifen's Eidolons, with Pela being at E4, she gets an extra debuff, and then Guinaifen at E1 gets an extra debuff. These 3, they all tie for the second most debuffs in the game, with Silverwolf being at the top, obviously. So if you don't have Silverwolf, but you have one of those other 3 characters, they can be insanely good at bringing about the debuffs on the enemy, so that Doctor Ratio has the higher damage and also guaranteed follow-up attack, because his follow-up attacks are where the damage is going to be, because his follow-up at level 10 has a higher damage multiplier than his ultimate at level 10, which is kind of ridiculous. So you definitely do want to try to get as much damage out of him as possible, which is why you want to have a debuffer on the team for sure. Then the last thing you're going to want to have on the team is going to be as a buffer as well, because you do want to increase his damage regardless. And I found that probably his two best in slot buffers, and I think this is going to entirely depend on your team build for which one you'll build, or which one you'll use rather, is either Ruan Mei or Bronya. Now Tingyun is also very much up there. I am kind of covering her face here, but Tingyun is also extremely good. And the 3 of them, really just depends on your team and how many skill points you're going to be using, because if you're going on a more skill point heavy build, like if you're running Ratio and you're planning to use Silverwolf skill a lot, or you're using Welt and you're using his skill a lot, then you might want to have a skill point neutral or positive support character, which is why I'd probably recommend either Ruan Mei if you have her, or if not, then run Tingyun. But if you're running a team that's not really using too many skill points, like if you're getting away with Pela basic attack, using Guinaifen's basic attack here and there, then you probably could run Bronya as well for that buffer slot, because she is a bit more skill point hungry than these other 2 supports here. But yeah, as long as for Ratio, for a Hypercarry team, if you have him with a debuffer, a buffer, and a sustain, you're going to be doing really good. And with having, especially with having Silverwolf, at least in my bit of testing I did today, you're going to have that 100% chance to hit his follow-up attack pretty much all the time. So that's just some really great guaranteed damage there as well. So yeah, Hypercarry team is the first comp. that I want to go over. Then the secondary comp, which really I only need to talk about one extra unit for this one, is going to be a Topaz follow-up attack comp. So Topaz and Ratio actually do have some very strong synergy, because Topaz, her big thing is applying the proof of debt status onto a single target. And that proof of debt status, not only is it going to increase the damage of Ratio's follow-up attack, but it does also count as a debuff, which means that Dr. Ratio's chance of putting out his follow-up attack will go up with it, which is extremely solid when you consider running them together and they're both single target. So you're always going to be getting extra follow-up attack damage, which it is his highest scaling trace. Plus, with Topaz, you also have all of her benefits from follow-up attacks as well. So these two have some very strong synergy with each other. And then with them, because you really only have one pretty consistent debuff in Proof of Debt, I do think that with your other team slot beside your sustain, which again, you can use any sustain, but Fushuan and Huoho will probably be the best in slot ones. I do think that any kind of debuffer should work here, because you'll have one from... You have one debuff here already from Topaz. If you have Silver Wolf, that's going to be best in slot still, just to get even more debuffs on that single target. But if you need to have other characters, you'll have Pela, you'll have Guinaifen. If you can get weakness breaks on them, then you'll be able to get even a weakness break as part of a debuff. So you should be able to have relatively 5 or 6 debuffs active with this team, which I still think is fine. And it also does get benefited by Topaz increasing follow-up attack damage as well. So it does kind of balance out that, sure, if you're not running Silver Wolf, you might be slightly below 6 debuffs, but because Topaz is giving that extra damage boost for follow-up attacks, and damage boosts are supreme when it comes to the damage calculations, Topaz is going to work extremely well here. And then, really quick, because I didn't make it into its own comp, I do think that Ratio could have some synergy with dot comps, but for a good amount of the dot characters, he does end up having, they might end up having some skill point issues, just because some of the dot characters do take a good amount of skill points. Like Sampo, you want to skill a lot with them. Guinaifen can honestly go back and forth, I feel like, just depending on the situation. So I do think that she is more beneficial. Plus, she has extra debuffs on her kit, which makes her more valuable for Ratio. But it's not a team that I really did too much testing with yet, so I didn't want to, include it and just be talking nonsense about it. But I do think that these two teams here, while I haven't tested the Topaz team because I don't own Topaz, I do still think this is going to be an extremely good team as well. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you all are running for your Dr. Ratio team. I do think that these two teams are going to be extremely strong, and I think they're going to be able to get you through all the content in the game. But yeah, let me know what you all think and what you all have been running for Ratio. Thank you all for watching, and I hope everyone's been enjoying using Dr. Ratio if they are building him. If you enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell. All that fun stuff there. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.